I first saw Willem in the late 70s when he was performing with the Wooster Group, the experimental theater in Soho, the only experimental theater group in Soho, which is still just up the road here. And this is when it was still dark and off the map. And it was full of artists and dancers and writers, all kind of living in these illegal lofts and performance spaces. And when I saw Willem, I thought, this is not acting, this is something else. And it's some other kind of communication. And the people in this company were showing us things that we were seeing for the first time, gestures and words and body movements, situations, things that were somehow deeply but really weirdly familiar. And I left every performance of the Wooster Group without actually understanding much of what I'd seen, but I never, ever missed a performance. And they just got sort of burned permanently into my brain. And it was Willem, of all the actors, who knew how to burn things into your memory. And since then, Willem moved out and around, and he's become an essential part of American classic films: Heaven's Gate, Platoon, Mississippi Burning, To Live and Die in LA, The English Patient, and on and on. And he worked with directors Oliver Stone and Marty Scorsese and Lars Ventura, and now the magnificent Julian Schnabel, who's right here. Julian. And hi, Willem. Willem's face is so unforgettable. He's an acrobat, he's a dancer, he's fearless. And you're looking at him standing there, and he can just disappear in front of your eyes. And he can do, his arms are just outstretched, and he just falls backwards. And he's gone. With all of these films, Willem has managed to also continue his work on stages, in his one-man shows, and also things like Bob Wilson's play, The Older Woman, where he played with Baryshnikov. I mean, who else could really fly around a stage with Baryshnikov and then in films convince you that he's Jesus Christ or a supervillain or a sergeant going mad in Vietnam? And then there's the hotel manager in the Florida Project and Max Schreck, and Shadow from the Vampire, not to mention the voice of a rat in fantastic Mr. Fox. And in each film, he's somehow more fully present than anyone else in the movie. And I'm thinking of The Last Temptation of Christ, when he's talking to this shouting crowd about how God has come back and that it's actually him, and he throws his head back and he goes, I am here. And through all these characters, that was so great. He does a couple of really amazing things. First, he does what artists like Bob Dylan do. He makes you fall in love with an outsider. He makes the outsider come alive. And he makes you look at him and then fall in love with him. And this is one of the greatest acts of empathy that any art can give us. Second is the biggest trick. He doesn't just show you the character. He lets you become that person, jump into his body, see through his eyes. And in At Eternity's Gate, the masterpiece by Julian Schnabel, you become Vincent van Gogh in a way that takes you far beyond the Vincent van Gogh that everybody supposedly knows. And by the way, what nerve to make a film about a painter. And this is also, of course, a film that's really about love. And it's a film that I was waiting all my life to see. Willem learned to paint for this film, getting lessons from the director and master painter, Julian Schnabel. But more than painting, the film is about seeing. So there you are. You're looking at someone who's looking. And the more you look at the person who's looking, you start to see through his eyes, and then the biggest miracle happens. You're inside his head. And you begin to see the world literally from someone else's eyes. Willem is one of the few people in the world, one of the few actors in the world that can actually do this. And this is a radical first-person art form, something that magnificent writers like Proust and Karl Ove Knausgaard know how to do. You don't look at the person or read about the person, you become that person. In Eternity's Gate, as Vincent, Willem says, I can make people feel what it's like to be alive. And this is really alchemy. This is really magic. From Heaven's Gate to At Eternity's Gate, we're going to look at some of Willem's amazing work. Here we go.